Hey there everyone, welcome to another Vibrant Music Teacher Chat, where today we're talking about the balance of being a strict or authoritative teacher and a fun one. So how do we maintain control over the lesson? How do we organize and structure things while still being fun and taking into consideration our students' individuality and their creativity? This is something I know a lot of new teachers struggle with, and I experience teachers alike as we head into online lesson world. So I'm sure you're going to be interested to hear what others have to say, as well as some of my tips on this topic today. Let's get started. Well, hello to everyone who's joining in live. Got lots of lovely hellos coming in. Morgan is joining us again, and Laurie, some of our regulars, and Janelle as well, and Eloise, you're becoming a regular too. That's awesome. And Jazreel from Singapore. Awesome to have you here, joining us from a different time zone, on the opposite side to many of those watching here today, and some over here in my time zone too in the UK. Hi, Helen, and Claire. You have a together name now, apparently, that is Kellen. Anyway, welcome to all of you. Today we're talking about strictness versus authority, or being fun versus having control, or whatever way you want to see that. This is something that I covered on a podcast episode recently, so I wanted to mention that right up front for those who want to listen on the go or want more on the same topic after we finish today's stream. The episode number was 92, so if you go to vibrantmusicteaching.com/92, just the digits 922, then that will get you to that podcast episode, and it might be of interest to some of you joining in today for further listening after that. I'd love to hear from those of you in the chat, those of you who are live, about this. Is this something you struggle with? Is it something maybe that you used to struggle with, but now isn't such a problem for you anymore? I think without identifying it, this was something I definitely had a problem with as a younger teacher. And I know many younger teachers do struggle with this area. So I'd love to hear from those of you who have been teaching a little while, like me, as well as the newer teachers here, whether you ever find it difficult to maintain control over the lesson and keep your student focused on the task at hand. Before we dive into the different sort of the digestion, I guess, I have prepared for you of this area, I want to let you know about our schedule for these chats. So we have 2 weeks left. 2 weeks left. There we go, at the regular schedule. So we've got next week Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and the following week Monday, Wednesdays, and Friday. From there, I think we're going to be going down to just Mondays. Probably, that's TBD, but that's what I'm thinking for now. That would be a good schedule for most people for the summer. You can let me know your thoughts on that. I know many of you want these chats to continue, even if it's on a different schedule, so hopefully that will work out for you guys. But the other thing I wanted to ask you in the chat is about the topics. So as I said, we're going live 3 more times next week and the following week. What do you want me to talk about? It's Friday, so it's the day that you get to have some input, have some say on what we want to talk about next week, and going forward. So this week we did scales on Wednesday. That was definitely a popular one. I think a lot of people enjoyed that. So maybe you want something more in that area, some foundational pedagogy concept like that, where it's a particular area of teaching that comes up again and again, like, I don't know, sight reading. We did technique before. That was also another very popular one. So I think you guys are liking those sort of areas, with maybe a bit of an online lesson adjustment or slant, but that it's a foundational concept. We've done a bit of improv in online lessons as well. That went down quite well, and chords was another really popular one. Yeah, so maybe there's something in that area. Maybe there's something business related. Maybe there's something else that I haven't thought of. So let me know what you think. What would you like to hear about? People chiming in on this area. So Christy said this is very timely, going back to in-studio lessons, and had an 8-year-old this past week was not following directions very well and using baby talk. Interesting, Christy, and you've been teaching a while too, right? So it's not just a new teacher thing. Helen said behavior was never a problem until I started teaching online lessons. That's interesting. And Eloise agreed with her there. So a lot of people having trouble with behavior specifically on online lessons, which is why this topic was brought up as something to discuss this week. So if you have ideas for what we want to discuss next week, let us know. Hey Mary, great to see you here. So I wanted to break this down because it's a bit of a sticky one. It's because I think because of this perception that a lot of us have of the typical piano teacher or the stereotypical piano teacher with the ruler on the back of the knuckles. I think a lot of us become so afraid of being that teacher that we go too far the other way. And this is something that comes up a lot for teachers that I chat to and people bring up with me because I'm all about the fun, right? I'm the fun teacher, I'm the one with all the games and all of that. That doesn't mean I don't have control over the lesson. So that's why I like to break this topic down, and I think it's a good one for us all to think about because there's no hard line here. There's no specific thing I can say that, oh, well, this is too far this way and this is too far the other way. It's not about that. But there is a balance to be struck. And there's an understanding about the different vocabulary we're using here. So sometimes we think about being fun as being loose in some way. And that's not what it means. In fact, the type of fun that I do is the Monica for Friends style fun, which is the structured, planned fun, right? I plan fun to get the work done. That's how I use fun within my lesson. So it's not about having no structure. It's not about not having a plan. And it's definitely not about the student having a free-for-all over my lesson content. That doesn't mean we can't be flexible, but it does mean that we need to stay in control. Right? So, these are the concerns that I hear from teachers all the time. Is that there is no control over the lesson, or that they've lost control over it, or not even concerns that I hear from teachers. It's something I see in teachers from the outside as well. And this is something that one of the teachers working at Colourful Keys kind of struggled with this year because they had a few younger students and they were used to maybe taking on transfer students a little bit more and students who already knew what to expect from a lesson. And those students with this teacher, the teacher didn't have a super controlled lesson environment, but it worked fine because there was already that expectation there over what a lesson would look like and what would be included and how much you would listen to their directions. But when you have a new student, especially a new student on the younger end, they don't have that. They don't have that expectation. And so that was what it was for them. But it can manifest in different ways for different teachers, for sure. The other aspect of this, or I believe what this reveals, is a lack of trust. Sometimes it's that the teacher is not trusting the student, and the student can feel that. But a lot of times it's the other way around. What is actually happening when the teacher's lost control of the lesson, or the student, is controlling the situation and wanting to do this and that and refusing certain activities and getting off track, is that the student does not have trust in the teacher. They don't have faith that the teacher has a plan, knows what they're doing, but is considering their goals, the student's goals, and what they want to learn. If the student believes that the teacher, this is all sounding a bit woo-woo, but I promise I'll make it more concrete in a moment. But if the student believes that the teacher has a plan and a path forward, and they have ultimately have trust in the teacher's plan, then they will stay on task for the most part, right? Whereas if they don't, that's where they can completely take control of the lessons. I talked about this element of fun. Let me know what you think of that. Whether, because I know this is true for some teachers, whether they you balk a little bit at the word fun within the context of lessons, because you think it does signify this sort of loosey-goosey lack of plan, lack of agenda, lack of proper learning happening within the lesson. Kimberly, I was such a sensitive child and a perfectionist, still am honestly. So one thing I struggle with is giving corrections in a way that is authoritative but does not hurt feelings. Do you have any advice? That's an interesting one, Kimberly. And I do think it comes back to this idea of trust. So that is going to take a while to establish, and it takes longer with a student who does have that perfectionist tendency. One thing which I was about to get to in a second in a different context, but I definitely think it's relevant to what you're asking about here, is factual language, and particularly language that is separated from the people. So I use this in terms of redirection of behavior, is why I had that word prepared, but I think it is also relevant to this question. So the more you can adjust your language to avoid saying you did not do a crescendo in bar 5, or do you think you forgot, blah blah blah, right? Those kind of things. Factual language can sound harsher, but sometimes it works much better, and it can distance the student from their mistake. So actually saying there was no, right? And those kinds of phrases can certainly help in terms of distancing the student from the correction, because that's really what we want them to do. At the same time, we also need to keep talking about the learning process and what we're expecting, because a lot of students who are really hard on themselves in the beginning of lessons, I find that actually they have some idea in their head, whether they can articulate it or not, that I am expecting them to play things correct on the first go. So, and this takes a long time to bake in, but talking again and again and again about, oh, we're going to practice this, we're going to try this 3 times. So making it clear that we're going to do it multiple times. Also, talking about the practice process in general and being very clear about your expectations of what they're going to play, and also talking about your own practice process so that they see that at every stage of the journey, no one ever plays things right 100% of the time. That's not the point. The point is the learning that's happening and actually enjoying the learning process. Hope that gives you some food for thought there, Kimberly. It's a big idea to unpack. Yeah, okay, I'll get to some of those other questions in a second. Let me run through the general topics that I had thought about, but there's some great chat happening in the discussion there. So that idea of factual language is another great point for specific behaviors. So if a student is doing anything you don't want them to, slapping their piano, just like randomly playing notes. Okay, I'm thinking like 3-4-year-olds here. They're just randomly playing notes and hitting the piano. The best way that I have found to redirect that behavior is to use phrases like, we don't X here. We don't hit the piano here. We don't pick up random toys from the floor here. That particular sentence structure is useful because it's factual. It just says that's not a thing that happens here. That's just right, the truth. It's not you're being bold, that's disrespectful. It's not a judgment on them and their behavior and who they are. It's just a fact. We don't do that here. And the here part is so that they can't say, well, at home, well, in school, right? So it's just a fact that in this room we do not do that thing. Another example of a way to change your language so that it's more fact-based is to adjust that instead of you saying, would you like to, before you do a thing. A lot of us have these kinds of almost verbal tics that we come out with, like because we think that we sound polite, basically. It's just a habit we've picked up in a way to sound polite and possibly to sound feminine sometimes, but we won't get into that. Would you like to do this next? Or how about we do that next? Don't say that. We are going to is much, much more effective. It feels a bit too direct sometimes, but it is going to get you better results, and it is ultimately kinder to the student because it doesn't give them the idea that they have a choice when they don't. If you are giving them a choice, give them a choice. Would you like to do this or this? But if the choice is this or this, right? If the choice is just between doing it or doing it, because that is the plan, then don't phrase it as if it is a question. So that's the biggest one for me in terms of changing the way things work on an ongoing basis. The other one is more of a beginning of lessons thing, and that can sometimes seem a bit unhelpful if we're already into a situation with a student and things are not going well behavior wise or trust wise or relationship wise. But in terms of a resolution for going forward with your teaching, goals and trust are key to avoiding these issues ever happening. That is, especially the older the student, but even with beginner students, that you show them that you see them as a person by asking them about their goals for lessons and the things that they enjoy, and making it clear that you take into consideration who they are. That you're not just showing up with your agenda, that this isn't like school where they just have to do the thing. That's not all schools, but most, where they just have to do the thing, because it can't be that. You can't control everything about the situation because they do have a choice, right? Yeah, some parents won't give them a choice, but most will. It's an extracurricular activity. It's not something they have to do. And so you need to show them that you see them and value their thoughts and their opinions and their preferences without giving them control of the situation. And that is about having more general conversations like this up front, asking them what they want to learn, asking them where they want to go with this, asking them which pieces were their favorite to practice this week, and all of those kinds of questions, and taking an interest in their general life. So asking them how their hockey game went, talking to them about their favorite film for a few minutes, all within the you having control of that situation. Does that make sense? You following me? I feel like some of this is a bit up in the sky, and I usually am so practical, but it's hard to break this down in a way that is. I can give you more examples if there's anything there that you need a specific example about, let me know. But hopefully that does give you some food for thought, because this is something that does take a lot of thought. The other thing that I think was important to mention here is that you do have a plan. I know in the beginning of teaching myself, and many teachers still, we arrive at lessons without a plan. That's right. I used to do that. Maybe you're in that boat now. We basically just rock up. Is that an international phrase? Or is that an Irish thing? Like, I just rock up to the lesson. I don't know. Anyway, they just rock up to the lesson and see what happens. Right? Maybe with some general idea, but not with specific ideas about what you're going to do. And the earlier on you are in your teaching, the more you need that structured plan to be there, even if you're going to abandon it later, because it builds the students' confidence. They can tell when you have a plan and when you don't. It's pretty apparent. I can say that as a student. It's pretty clear when a teacher is basically just showing up. Yeah, you say rock up in Australia. Thank you, Mary. You're just showing up, rocking up to the studio and just taking it as it comes. You can tell, right? You've seen that as a student in your teachers, maybe at some stage. And it's very, very obvious. So we don't want to be that teacher. The reason we don't want to be that teacher is not because we can't teach on the fly. It's because it's a bit lazy, and it's because we can do better. I can teach on the fly. I can just rock up and just say whatever comes into my head, and it'll probably be pretty much fine, but it won't be excellent, will it? So if you have that plan, the students will see it, they will feel it, and you'll be able to move through it and veer from it and still know that you can get back to it when it's necessary, right? Okay, I'm checking in with the chat here to see what your questions are. Cherry. Oh, let me get rid of these because we can't see what's going on, can we? I don't know if you're going to get into this, but I was wondering, how do you handle a student who does not do all of the homework assignments? I don't give it a lot just so I can get it all done. So, Jerry, the thing is, I'm going to have to divide this by age. An older student who has not done all the homework assignments, that comes back again and like I keep doing, to goals. So if, let's say I have a teenager and they tell me that they want to, I've talked to them about their goals consistently, they tell me they want to do the grade 6 theory exam because they want to get into XYZ program, and they're not doing their homework. Well, that's just a matter of treating them like an adult, even though they're not, and having a conversation where you say, listen, you said you want to do this exam, do you still want to do it? Right, this needs to happen. Simple as that, straightforward. No pussyfooting around, no messing. Just do it or don't do it. Almost, it's not my problem. You know? Almost putting the responsibility on them to say, this is your decision. Like, you're not doing this. I'm not doing this for the crack. Like, you can do it or you can not do it. And I'm here to help you. I'm not here to push you to do things because you're 18 or whatever age they are. So that's older students. And adults, even more so, it's about just letting them off the hook, in my opinion, because they'll come in and say, I'm so sorry I didn't do practice. And I don't like to get into that dynamic with adult students where they think of me as some kind of authoritarian figure, because then all this psychological mess of school tends to come into things from there, and we don't want that with our adult students. So they'll have all these, scars, however big or small. They have some kind of emotional baggage in regards to education. Most adults do, in some way, shape, or form. And so I don't like to get into that role, and I almost will take a step back there and make myself more of the coach and just saying, okay, yeah, no problem, I'm here to help you, like, step back away from that. Now let's deal with kids. So I've sort of broken this down into 3 categories, Cherry. I hope this is useful. But the younger students, if they haven't done their homework, I say basically nothing about that, and I talk to the parents because it's their problem. That's the fact. A 7-year-old cannot remember to do their homework, cannot do this and that and follow these directions and all that, executive functioning skills. They don't have that yet. So I just say, oh, all right, okay, let's blah, blah, blah. Like, in the moment, that's what I say to them is, all right, let's go through it again so you remember it for this week, so you know what you're doing, so you feel confident with it, all of that. And then I email the parents later and say, well, if it's a one-off, I don't do anything about it. But if it's a pattern, I email the parents and I say, listen, little Susie is not doing her homework. This is why this needs to happen. Yada, yada, yada. Hope that helps Cherry with that. Okay. Jenny, my student ignores me correcting her. She just shrugs and plays it however she wants. She's like this in face-to-face and online lessons. Jenny, that's an interesting one. Most likely, I haven't met your student, I haven't been in the situation, but a lot of students who do that, they're what they don't want is to try so that they don't have to fail, right? It's that old chestnut. So for me, it is about breaking the task down enough before even correcting them, right? So getting way ahead of this and saying and breaking it down into tiny little micro steps so that they are successful at every stage of it and they can't make the mistake in the first place. And that is true for our perfectionist students that we were talking about earlier with Kimberly. Breaking things down enough into enough steps that they are successful at every stage and they don't have to face those big barriers. Now, if she really thinks she's just the bee's knees and she's awesome, like I said, I don't think that's probably the case. It's probably the opposite. It's probably insecurity. But if she really does just think, I don't need a teacher, this is all nonsense, right? I know what I'm doing already. My mum is just silly and making me do lessons. If that is her attitude, just have a honest, straight conversation with her where you say, do you want to be here? Like, what do you want from your lessons? Why are you here? Okay. Is it because you need some help with something? So that's what I'm here to help you with. And you could even try having completely flipping the lesson and saying to her when she comes in, okay, what do you need help with today? So that you're setting it up that you are there to help her with a problem that she is having. And if she produces that problem and asks for your advice on it, then she has to take your advice on it, and she probably will. So there's a couple of different things you could try there, Jenny. Really active chat today, guys. This is awesome. Let me see if I can answer some more questions. I don't think I'm going to get to them all today. This is amazing. And you guys are obviously helping each other out, which is great as well. Kelly, I love that. I'm honest with my students if I'm having an off day too and find we help each other. Yeah, it's good to be straight with your students and just be a human and let them know. Nice. Okay, really good thoughts here. Sometimes in the online lessons, by the way, you absolutely just need to say, scrap it. Like, student hasn't practiced, they're looking like they've got a bit of cabin fever malaise, as we're talking about there, and you just say, right, let's XYZ. So, like, I have a student at the moment who, and her mum and I have chatted about this, she just does not do well with video calls. She finds it really awkward. And she said, like, the mum has said to me, she's like this with calls with her friends. Like, she finds looking at the camera awkward even after so many weeks of having to do this in various formats, various contexts. She just doesn't like it. She doesn't connect with it, right? And so sometimes she sort of forgets herself and we get along quite well. And then other times she will just, I can see the face is crinkling or she's avoiding looking at the camera completely because she's just hating it or feeling like somehow, I don't know, judged or something. And she does have perfectionist tendencies. And when that's happening, I'll get through as much as I think, I'll push it as far as I can. And then I'll just play on a strength of hers. So she has a wonderful imagination. So I'll just redirect and say, okay, what would it sound like if a giraffe arrived on your piano right now? Oh, the giraffe would go for a walk along, and she tells a whole story, and she's fantastic at that kind of thing. So that might not be the thing for your student, but sometimes you need to have that backup plan that you just say, scrap it. Okay, we're not going to make progress today. We're just going to make sure things end on a positive note, or make sure we get through this lesson time in a way that is beneficial for their perception of what music lessons are. Does that make sense? So that I 100,000% give you permission to do that. When I say have a plan and we should all, don't be lazy about planning your lessons, I'm not saying you can't have days where you just scrap the plan, and I'm not saying you shouldn't just sometimes take it easy on your student and explore things that they need to explore. Give this video a like if that resonates with you, by the way. If you have had those lessons where you need to just say, okay, what if there was a trail of ants walking across your piano? What would that sound like? Or show me you playing every A on the piano as fast as you possibly can, or show me 10 jumping jacks, or anything like that. Have you had those moments? I think we all have in our online lessons. Great reminder, Laurie, thank you. Before I let you guys go, I need your topic suggestions for next time. And on the replay as well, if you're watching, you can let me know there too. I will check in before I set the topics on Monday. But yeah, we're going to be live again next Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So let me know what you want us to talk about. What are we gonna do? Laurie had a suggestion there. She said, professional development. Your whole site is my professional development. Can we count that? Do we keep track of the hours so we can have proof of our training, etc.? Yeah, just briefly, Laurie, I definitely think keeping track of your professional development is important, and we can talk about that more in another show if other people want to hear about it. But there are certificates for most of the courses and most of the webinars, so that would be a first step, is downloading those as you work through and just counting your hours, like literally keeping a running list of this. I do this for the purposes of preparing my newsletter for my studio families, because I always put a section which is about lifelong learning, and there I mention like I attended this many webinars or over 100 or something like that. That sounds impressive and is true. So good to keep track of that for sure. Janelle, when I need to scrap things and work on something else, what do I give them then to practice? Sometimes I scrap it, but then there's nothing to practice, even though we did a lot in the lesson. Well, you can give them elements of what you did, depending on what it is, for their practice. However, it's perfectly fine to just say to the parent, listen, we didn't cover new ground. This assignment sheet is mostly the same as last week, but I felt that they needed to just have, some freedom or whatever it was that they needed. So just to be honest with the parents, because often they will then come back to you and say, yeah, thank you so much for that piano improv or whatever it is that they really enjoy. It's been such a respite from the stress that they're getting from other areas. And they definitely needed to just let off some steam today. So thank you for that. That's most parents are going to completely understand that. So that would tend to be my approach. Rhythm exercises. That's an interesting one, Carol. We could do something about that. Yeah. And was there a topic from Claire there? Someone was referring to it. I don't see it. Oh, what to give students over the summer break and how much. Okay, interesting one. Learning disability, special needs might be another one, Mary. Okay, great. If you're watching live right now and you think of something, come back to the replay and post it here so that I have them all in one spot, and I will organize this stuff and set our topics for next week. But in the meantime, I hope you have a fabulous weekend. And if you want something to do over the weekend, if you want some fresh inspiration and you're not a member yet, you can still sign up for our $1 1-week trial using the coupon code online. That's only going to be valid for another couple of weeks, so you're going to want to hop to that if you haven't signed up and you've been thinking about it or sitting on the fence. I hope you all enjoyed this discussion about Strictness versus authority or fun versus control? Let me know if you did in the comments, and make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button on this video if you did too. That's it for today, guys. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you back here next week. Have a great weekend.